And with that, I just want to get us started. Rob's got, I think, a lot of good information. Rob Davis is a Chief Growth Officer of CleanCounts, and it's a major organization representing North America with various certificates and everything. I've known him for years when he used to be with Fresh Energy, and then when he was with Connexus, and now he's a guy with a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge and background. So I'm expecting big things tonight, Rob. So anyway, take it forward. Thank you.
Doug, thank you so much. It is so great to be able to present to you and everyone else. And I just want to say, let's just keep the expectations nice and low, right? Um, but but seriously, since Doug, as you wisely pointed out, there's a number of people here tonight, and there's be even more that will see it in the weeks to come on YouTube. And all we have to say, I believe, is that today is the best day. Whatever today is the best day to make a gift to MRES. Every gift counts. The phones are available. Click the links, put in the credit card numbers, make a donation and support this great organization. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to mention to people is that Rob has said he's okay with the questions along the way.
Sure.
So if you would just raise your hand whenever you have a question, and we'll let it get started right now.
That's great. That's great. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Doug, and thank you all. It's great to be with you. It's great to be speaking about an incredibly important topic at this point in time when the grid is undergoing so much transition and so much acceleration. And we as a society really need to make sure that we are building trust in the systems that support all of our public claims from either our regulated utilities or our private sector companies. So we are the organization that is formerly known as M-RETS, and I'll tell some stories about that in just a minute. But we're delighted to be CleanCounts now, and we are North America's largest and I would say most innovative clean energy registry. So the mission of our organization, we are a 501(c)(4) nonprofit, just like your local Rotary. A lot of chambers of commerce are 501(c)(4s. We're not the political kind. We're the kind that has a social benefit purpose. And so we validate the environmental and energy attributes to serve as a trusted gateway to these markets. So it's folks at the Fortune 25, the state and federal regulators, and the world's largest independent power producers that put their trust in our system. In fact, give you a sense of the size and scope of our software, we handled around 400 million megawatt hours of renewable energy certificates last year. That's a bit more than 40% of all the renewable energy certificates issued in North America. And fun fact, Doug, we just issued, I think earlier today, this is somewhere in mid-November, our 2 billionth, with a B, 2 billionth renewable energy certificate. It is an extraordinary milestone, particularly when you look at the humble beginnings of this organization that started way back in 2004, when Isaac Walton League and Great Plains Institute got together and started having some conversations with folks because they saw on the horizon that that there were states that had these very ambitious renewable energy standards, RPS state standards. But what happened was that they didn't really have a very effective way to measure progress against those state laws. And so you can have all of the, 1.5% requirements, 50% requirements, carve out requirements, 100% requirements that you want. But if you don't have a way to measure it, how are you going to get there? So quick history of our organization is we had a bunch of listening sessions between GPI and the Isaac Walton League, and went to the good folks at the Joyce Foundation and raised some money to create the first operating procedures, signed our very first software contract with a software provider, and that was handled by the Wisconsin Public Service Commission, hired some staff, and then got the tracking system up and running in and around 2007, and then secured nonprofit status a couple years later, and then from there we actually looked at the software and realized that we just needed in 2017 we needed to rebuild this stuff from scratch. And so now these days we own our own software and are able to be incredibly innovative with it. So at the time, there was a big question of governance, and I think these questions are also playing out in the West as they look at Western energy markets. But so this is like 3 lines of a giant spreadsheet that Eric Schroeder and others put together, trying to determine where should this tracking system be housed? Who should be responsible for this thing? And there was no good, easy answers. Nobody really wanted to house it. And so the folks that organized the board finally decided we need to create our own organization. It's a very Minnesota thing, to just start a new nonprofit. And this was one of the steps along that way to create a new nonprofit. So we went out and got some funding from the DOE. And this is the history of how we got our name of M-RETS, which was there is the grant application to say we need to create a Midwest Renewable Energy Tracking System and formal oversight organization. And so that's where M-RETS came from. Why is there a hyphen in there? I think because if it wasn't there, you wouldn't really be able to pronounce it. It'd be like Mr. Etz or something. I don't exactly know, but it would be a lot more confusing than M-RETS. So that said, we went about examining how that was actually kind of limiting us right now, and realized that having grown over the years to become the nation's largest tracking system, we needed to look for a new solution, a new brand, and have an invitation that wasn't quite so wonky, that wasn't a 5-letter acronym with a hyphen stuck in there. However, our service is required by several states, so we can't just change the name without consulting with them. So we needed to check in with them first. I'm sure none of you follow this stuff because this is this is the nerd end of a very deep nerd pool, but tracking system software is a thing in the United States of America. There's a number of tracking services. All of them, some of them are limited to just one state. Some of them are a region, like NEPOOL is just in New England, or NY-GATS is just in New York. And there's regions, and then there's software that provides those services. So we looked at ourselves and looked at our capabilities and tried to decide, who do we want to be when we grow up? And so we knew that, like, if we're going to go to market with the name M-RETS, that's kind of already taken. A lot of people out there are familiar with M-RETS. They're an airline and they sponsor basketball tournaments. And so the name M-RETS just really wasn't something we could continue to move forward with. And so we needed to look for some other options. Thankfully, I have a deep well of very smart folks to call on. Even Michael Noble, I joke, but Michael is fantastic, and he's been a terrific mentor and friend. And he did a really hard thing. I'm sure that a lot of you remember the Minnesotans for an Energy Efficient Economy, and it became Fresh Energy. So when I called Michael up, he shared with me that that M-RETS might be an even worse named organization than ME3. And we can all argue that, but ultimately there's no perfect name. There's names that are better, and change can be hard, but it was necessary. So we went about looking for other options. Michael had a hard task, right? Of like, Fresh Energy sounds like an underarm deodorant or something else. So we knew that, like, we actually needed to go to our board with a more thought out, complete picture of what our new name would be and what it would look like, in order to get the votes we needed for a successful result. And so this is going into the marketing end of how do we talk about a tracking system in a way that most people can relate to. So let's just think about qualities of what a strong brand is. And this is just like some marketing 101. Alliteration, you know, these are some brands you're familiar with: Coca-Cola, PayPal, TikTok. Alliteration is a common tactic. Assonance, it's the oo sound, the Hulu, or other common sounds. Consonants, Dunkin' Donuts, Kit Kat. Rhyming, to words that sound similar. There's this amazing marketing effect called the K effect, where brands that start with a K or use the strong K are more memorable, such as Kool-Aid or Kmart or Kit Kat. There's an amazing new study that happens, I guess it's from the last 3 years, that they've done on plural brand names, showing that plural brand names like team names, think of most team names: Timberwolves, the Vikings, the Warriors, etc. Um, Team names and a lot of band names are plural. And so people start to associate plural name brands with trustworthiness and camaraderie. Suggestive is also really important because a precise technical name like Midwest Renewable Energy Tracking System, that just tells you everything that it's right there. But something that's more suggestive, like Travelocity, puts you in the neighborhood of like, oh, you guys must do something related to travel. Um, and then the concept of emergence, when you can put two words together and get something that is even better. So we had to replace Midwest, we had to replace renewable energy, and we had an opportunity to fix just tracking system. So for renewable energy, we needed to track more fuel types because we do track renewable energy, but we also track nuclear. We're one of the only tracking systems in North America that tracks nuclear, which is important in the state of Minnesota and a lot of other places where they have carbon-free laws. And we're going to be tracking, Excel and others are going to be using some nuclear to help meet those obligations. So we need to embrace and think about using the word clean, frankly, because it's inclusive of both renewable energy as well as nuclear, as well as geothermal and other types of new and emerging and interesting novel technologies. But it also has other definitions. It's used to emphasize completeness. You know, you're knocked clean off your feet. It's associated with honesty: come clean, keep nothing hidden. It's also associated with audits. So that's a really interesting thing for us to hold on to and think about, is the word clean. And then the word counts. The noun obviously refers to the multiple registries we operate. We operate the largest renewable energy certificate registry, but we also operate a renewable thermal registry. And we're developing a registry for clean ammonia, or hydrogen then converted into ammonia fertilizer or for shipping fuel. But counts is also an interesting verb, and I love this part of the word because it's the clean that counts. And so when it counts, it means that it has value and it's worth counting. And then because it's plural, it gets that affinity of the sports teams that the research showed. So we can bring them all together and we get something better. Clean counts. The counts are clean and trustworthy. Clean counts. The energy attribute certificates are meaningful and valuable, and both for compliance and voluntary customers. And then the clean counts are, they kind of give you an idea of kind of what we do. They're suggestive that we kind of count what's clean, and I'm thankful for that. Also, cleancounts.org was available for $25, so that was a huge relief. And yeah, so we got lucky on that, and we really embraced that. So it was a unanimous result from our board, and so we rebranded, having been M-RETS for 18 years. We rebranded as CleanCounts in May of this year. Then we started thinking about, well, what does this need to look like and feel like? Our staff said, hey, the matrix, when I think about M-RETS, I think about the matrix and data and security. So we were thinking about these things, and worked with Jeff Johnson and his team at Design Replace. Phenomenal design group. He and Lucas do a great job, and we came up with this mark. So it's been fantastic to be able to talk about CleanCounts, 18 years of reliable energy and counting, CleanCounts through progress, CleanCounts. There's a number of different ways we can use it. CleanCounts everyone, CleanCounts on our future. So that's how we got to CleanCounts. But I'm sure that there's more questions like, so what the heck do you do? And yes, as the name suggests, we do count what's clean. So if you have ever seen a Cliff Bar, then you are familiar with renewable energy certificates. Anytime you go into the grocery store, you can find food items that have a claim. They make a public claim about use of renewable energy. So in this case, Cliff Bars happen to be baked with 100% renewable energy from on-site solar, as well as use of renewable energy certificates. And so anytime you make a public claim, you better make sure you can back it up with the auditable proof, because otherwise you get into trouble with the FTC. So, making public claims about use of renewable energy is a key function of the voluntary market. But then also, what we call the compliance market, the states that have passed renewable energy laws, and they require their utility to prove that they've generated a certain amount of electricity. That's the utilities do as well. They use our system to issue renewable energy certificates on an annual basis, and then demonstrate to the Public Utilities Commission or to the auditors that yes, indeed, they did use that renewable energy, and then they retire the certificate. So it's an interesting cycle of confirming a clean energy generator exists and it's valid, and then it's producing a given amount of renewable energy, and then they're retiring that on an annual basis. So in this way, we are very, very, very similar to I guess other registries. So we the core function we provide is we prevent double counting. We don't want Cliff Bar and Excel and a corporate or another corporation taking credit for the same kilowatt or megawatt hours of energy. So we're similar to wedding registries, actually. This is kind of fun. Or baby registries. This is a familiar word, registries. You use them. You've used them. And they prevent you from buying a second gift, maybe a second Instapot for the happy couple, or a second, little baby onesie for the new baby. And so for that reason, we are actually your third favorite kind of registry. So you can just remember that CleanCounts, a clean energy registry, is your third favorite kind of registry, and it prevents double counting or double buying of gifts. Like I said, we were founded from a grant from DOE, and since then, we haven't taken any philanthropic dollars whatsoever. We're a 501c4, and we've been funded by operating fees. So it's 1 penny to issue a certificate and 2 pennies to retire a certificate. All of our fees are transparent and posted on our website. The certificates represent 1 megawatt hour of clean electricity, and they provide, like I said, that auditable record of clean energy production and use. So getting one level more technical. This is the way that this absolutely blew my mind when I really got the full demonstration of the team's capabilities and the extent they go to validate that each and every single generator in our system responsible for, that touched 40% of all of the RECs in North America, each and every one of those projects has been validated in a way that is secure and of high caliber and quality. And so these valid generators, whether it's a wind facility, a solar facility, a hydro facility, or nuclear or others, then are validated, and then they're eligible to issue certificates based on their proven renewable energy production. Importantly, this is not the carbon credit world. That's one world that's completely separate from the renewable energy certificate and the validated production of renewable energy. So the anatomy of a REC, of a renewable energy certificate, is really data. There's been a number of folks who have come to us, blockchain entrepreneurs that are like, oh, we need to put this all on the blockchain and tokenize all of this, and we're going to disrupt business. And that's not really true. So the hard part of doing a registry is actually first and foremost trust, is the energy knowledge and expertise with regards to markets, and frankly centralization of the data and the governance model that the very wise group of stakeholders put together when they founded the organization. A number of data pieces goes into each and every single renewable energy certificate, and those are each single one is unique. And what's interesting, though, is the bottom word here, this word eligibilities, if applicable. And that's interesting because that infers that maybe there's more than just this energy data that we're looking at. Maybe there's other attributes, and not just energy. Like, for example, one eligibility is whether a REC is eligible for use in a state's given compliance program. So some RECs are eligible for use against Minnesota's renewable portfolio standard, or Illinois' renewable portfolio standard, or Wisconsin's. That's one example of eligibilities. Another is near and dear to my heart. So I started my career in energy working for Michael Noble at Fresh Energy, as you mentioned, Doug. And one of the things we worked on together, and I give Fresh Energy a lot of credit for being extremely supportive of new and novel approaches that make a transformative difference in the world, is the idea of like actually using habitat and low flowering ground cover to help increase the public acceptance of solar overall. And so when I was at Conexus Energy, I noticed that our sales team was selling RECs as though they were just any other REC. And we wanted to make sure that we could, as a co-op, our mission was to make sure that we were getting the most revenue and for the investment that our members had made. So we reached out to the manager of the tracking system, Ben Gerber, who's just passed his 10-year anniversary with the organization, and said, "Hey, we've got 20 megawatts of pollinator-friendly solar. Like, is that an attribute you could track?" And Ben and his team said, "Yeah, actually, we could track that." And so began an opportunity to embed additional data and attach it to the REC. And so we issued a press release, got some media coverage for pollinator-friendly RECs, and which is interesting because some entities actually want to transact on that. And I don't know that they want to pay a premium, but they'll definitely express a preference for RECs that are not just a commodity REC. In fact, within Conexus and at some renewable energy markets conferences, these became thought of as boutique RECs, or craft RECs. Some examples of pollinator-friendly solar from this picture on the left is from the NG project in Anoka, or near Ramsey, Minnesota. And the one on the right is another NG project from somewhere in central Wisconsin. But the research is absolutely clear. The practice works. Minnesota's pollinator-friendly solar scorecard results in vegetative habitat that increases insect abundance by 5-fold, and native bumblebees by 20-fold. This is an extraordinary accomplishment. And just recently at the state fair, we celebrated more than I think it's 9,000 acres of pollinator-friendly solar have been established in the state of Minnesota since this policy was first established back in 2015. That's more than 1 billion, with a B, 1 billion stems of pollinator-friendly and native plants and grasses. So whether they look like the white flowers in this picture, the yellow black-eyed Susans in the other picture, or the purple, I think this is vervain behind me on the Enel Aurora site project. This is just a practice that helps public acceptance for solar. I'll give you a sense of what it's like from this short video I took a few years ago. Walking around these projects is just absolutely extraordinary. It's always changing, just like any pollinator landscape, and changes throughout the year. But birds make extraordinary use of these facilities. There's some great research by Argonne National Lab showing that bird abundance and use of these facilities is they basically, the birds think of them like a park, and the bats do too. So we've come a long way since the early days of solar, when there were so many misconceptions and thinking that, like, oh my gosh, the panel is going to vaporize the plants or vaporize the, uh, the birds or the bats, and that's just a wild misconception probably based on a different type of solar. So photovoltaic solar, as this research from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab shows, that the public that has been on and around an agrivoltaic site, meaning pollinator friendly or grazed by sheep, there's a few projects that have crops growing in the rows, but most of these projects that are in this study are either pollinator friendly ground cover or grazed by sheep. And compared to greenfield solar or landfill or brownfield solar, the public support for these projects is twice as high, and the public opposition is half. So for less than 1% of the ground cover budget, less than 1% of the total project cost, you can shape and inform public opinion in a very significant way. And that's really the rationale for why we began tracking pollinator-friendly solar, was to give market participants an instrument to capture some of the value that they were realizing from these solar projects that had different designs. Here's really what the technology looks like in terms of like the system and the software. You can see on the right the rec batch details, and so this is a snapshot of the project from that project, and I've removed all of the confidential information and inserted kind of other information. But the word eligibilities is right below, and you can see we have a list of other eligibilities. So the Iowa Voluntary Green Program, the Montana, North Dakota programs, and habitat-friendly solar is one of the eligibilities that we have to attach to RECs. Looking to next year, we'll look to think about how this idea can grow and expand, and we're pretty excited about that. I mentioned that there weren't necessarily organizations that were excited about paying a premium, but there were definitely organizations that were interested in expressing a preference. And we see that significantly. So Pinterest and Organic Valley, as well as Cliff Bar, they've all expressed a preference and developed pollinator-friendly solar. Cliff Bar's bakery in Twin Falls, Idaho, actually has an on-site ground-mounted solar array that has pollinator-friendly ground cover and a walking path and interpretive signage. It's a really nice project. Asmodee as well, the publishers of Catan board game, they actually secured in partnership with Conexus some pollinator-friendly RECs for the printing of the board game Catan New Energies. And then Prairie Organic Spirits is located right in Conexus territory. Their Prairie Organics line, including their gins, are using pollinator-friendly renewable energy certificates. And Invictus Brewing is also another one that's done some collaborations, as well as out in Washington State, Bonneville Environmental Foundation. This organization has a long history of being very influential in driving the RECs as a market instrument forward. They were involved at the very, very, very beginning of the idea of using RECs as a valid market instrument at the earliest stages of this market. So next, looking forward, RECs are handled today on an annual basis. That means, yes, that the way that we as a society have set up our system is that we can use whatever kind companies, entities can use whatever kind of energy we want, for 364 days a year. And then on the 365th, we can buy a bunch of renewable energy certificates and call and say to our auditors with an absolute straight face that we are powered by renewable energy. This is the way we've set it up, and it has been extremely powerful and effective in making so much progress. There is a big conversation right now about like what this next phase looks like and how we need to think about whether we need to shrink that time frame from a year down to a month, or even smaller, even hourly or sub-hourly. There's also a conversation about additional emissions data and other location data going into renewable energy certificates. And we welcome all kinds of additional data because there's a market for all of it. As a nonprofit, we have the mission to basically support anyone who wants to help accelerate decarbonization and use renewable energy, either electrons or molecules. And we want to just make sure that they have the necessary software infrastructure to be able to make trusted claims. We also operate the renewable energy certificates, renewable thermal certificate registry that operates in North America. And we launched that in 2019, because we rebuilt our entire system and relaunched it with code that we own. We hired a bunch of developers. Holy cow. Our team is, we have 40 software engineers that have a combined 500 years of software development expertise and more than 120 years of clean energy registry specific expertise. This is a very tiny niche in the overall industry, but we are just delighted to be a powerhouse in providing clean, innovative solutions in a very responsive way. We offer nuclear tracking with EACs, energy attribute certificates, and we're well underway in developing a clean ammonia certificate registry. We're calling these CAMs because no one wants to say CACs, and we're borrowing the M from the first word ammonia. And so CAMs is an interesting way to think about the new technology that's allowing production of clean ammonia locally using 100% renewable energy, and then transacting on the certificate that validates a certain amount of ammonia has been produced with renewable energy. So I'm really appreciative, again, for all of the good work that the organization does, and your time and questions, and I really welcome the conversation. So thank you.
Rob, I have a question. I always hear about South Dakota having so much renewable energy, and I know their solar is just minimal. Is it, I mean, are they part of this whole thing being measured, and is it hydropower that they're talking about?
I'm sure there's some hydropower in there. I'm sure there's a whole lot of wind power in there. I didn't look at South Dakota's data. I haven't looked at that recently, but I imagine there's a whole lot of wind power in there. Wind curtailment is a major issue in southern Minnesota and the transmission there. And at times when it's windy, we're having increasing number of days when it's just extremely windy and there's just not enough bandwidth on the transmission lines to get that power to market. It's an opportunity potentially to look at local ammonia production and keep those wind turbines spinning and generating, property tax, and then not have to put the power on the wires. Kim?
Hello, how are you, Rob? Good to see you.
Likewise.
Yeah, so thanks so much for your presentation. It was terrific. And yeah, you've got a long history of doing such wonderful things, so I really appreciate that. I've got a ton of questions, but I'm going to sort of rattle off a bunch, okay? And just see if you
Okay.
can get it out. Um, how much, you talk about 1 cent per megawatt hour is the cost of a registry and 2 cents to deregister it. Is that correct?
So we publish our fees on our website and we charge 1 penny to generate a rec and 2 pennies to retire a rec. And so if you
What
want,
is that? Yeah,
yeah,
so what does that mean as far as a percentage of like the cost of a
Ooh.
megawatt hour then of electricity?
Yeah, that's actually there's a long answer there, but I'll give a little bit of. But we as a registry always try to keep the price that we charge for the issuance and retirement fees below 1% of the commodity price. So we look at the commodity in terms of what RECs are selling for. We do an assessment of price once every about three years or so. And we always try to make sure our fees are lower than 1% of that commodity price. It needs to be something that's de minimis, because otherwise there's a strong objection, and then there's motivation to go back to the old days, which was frankly the old days was I'm here in the cities and I have my factory and I sign a bilateral contract with a wind developer and he signs over all of those energy attributes to me. And now when the auditor comes and says, well, you claim on your website that you're 100% renewable energy, show me that you are. And you just hold up this giant stack of contracts and every contract is different, and it's just a mess if we were going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies with bilateral contracts for every single different solar and wind deal. So we have to keep the cost of the rec issuance and registry very, very, very low. But like I said, we also have to keep the innovation very high and the responsiveness very high. Our customer service team, they are kind of obsessed with customer service. They have an average response time of under 4 hours for any customer, service ticket, and they have a full resolution average response time or median response time of 16 hours. So like 74% of all of the tickets we have touched in the last 3 years have been handled in one touch. So yeah, so there's a balance of cost as well as high quality service and innovation.
That's basically the mantra of Minnesota, isn't it?
Yep.
But I love it. So it's like trying to create the relative, thought of the expense because you're talking about megawatt hour and what we see or customer, I should say customers and us, all of us see is per kilowatt hour on their bill. So something that's 15 cents a kilowatt hour and you say it's 1 penny. So you see what I mean? But
Oh, I
it's
see.
totally different, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
everyone gets that like sort of that's what I wanted to clarify. Like it's megawatt hour, which is of course another 1,000th of what we're normally saying, or one
Right.
hundredth, I guess, what we're normally saying. But again, that's really good to clarify. I just wanted to make sure how that works because, of course, that wants potentially put it at a disadvantage. But I love the work you're doing. What's the in regards to like the future and how companies are looking at this? I mean, where does renewable energy credits or tracking go in light of this now administration that doesn't really care or require compliance, I'm assuming, with anything renewable energy wise.
Yeah, we were the organization actually grew under the last Trump administration because we just saw a significant growth in the voluntary market side of our business. So we have two sides of the business, if you will. One is the compliance, where we work, directly hand in hand with state regulators to help them design programs that then they require for use by their utilities. And then the other is just because we have such phenomenal customer service, such high innovation, and such a great product that's has a great user interface. There's just voluntary markets, just voluntary customers just come to us because we're great to work with. We have a full API support, and they just like working with either use with the user interface or directly tapping in via the application programming interface. Where it goes is, I think that there's been a number of national papers and articles about, we're already at the point where we the lowest cost of producing electricity is renewables. And now that we're at a point where prices are creeping up, and because some legacy generators are being forced to stay online, we're going to see more of that dynamic of like people just saying, we want to see more renewable energy because it's the cheapest form of producing electricity. And so I think the economy has really made up its mind that more renewables are the way to go. And the world is definitely moving that direction as well.
Real quick question. Um, how many of the people you have in your organization now are working from Minnesota?
Oh, so let's see, we have registered generators in 48 out of the 50 states.
No,
Um,
I'm saying like the employees of the organization,
oh,
CleanCounts.
yeah, no,
Because I know you're here. I saw you at, a couple of weeks ago at McNamara, we're talking
yeah,
about, and I know Ben, I'm assuming still lives here, right, in downtown
yep,
Minneapolis and stuff.
yeah.
So how many of your
Oh,
big
yeah, how
growth
many staff are
are
here?
people yeah.
Yeah. We've got about 25 staff here. We actually just outgrew our co-working space. So, in conjunction with issuing our 2 billionth rec and hiring our maybe 25th employee, we moved from a co-working space in downtown Minneapolis to basically 2 blocks away into the Baker Center building. It's just immediately east of the IDS. And so we're on the 8th floor of that building. I look out the window there, and it's the Minneapolis Center. No, Minneapolis. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Yeah, not the
It is
Chamber of
ideas for the
Commerce.
Marquette Hotel is
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there.
It's right the Marquette. Yep. And yeah, so we've got our own office, our own floor. I mean, not quite our own floor, but our own office. We have 25 employees there. But then we have roughly 20 employees that are out of state. And frankly, the next largest batch of our long-term staff are based in Uruguay. And that's based on a long time relationship. They know the system very, very, very well. They're on a nearly identical time zone. They're a phenomenal group of individuals. And we have regular exchange with them, either coming to Minnesota or going down to Uruguay. So our entire
Fascinating.
development team is roughly 40 staff.
Wow, fascinating. Are those folks that are doing I should have lunch. But are they doing like software development? Is that what they do in Uruguay?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
That's what the vast majority of the team is really doing software development. So we have a number of Scrum Masters, we have coders, developers, project architects, folks that are writing requirements, teams that are meeting to implement new features and technology, teams that are developing and deploying high quality solutions to eradicate some of the bugs that pop up in the production and process. you know, all software has bugs. If you don't have bugs, you're not innovating, you're stagnant. So it's great to see the efficiency with which the team can drive that kind of innovation forward. Minneapolis
Great, thank
Club,
you.
by the way, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, that's what I
Window
thought.
on the
Oh,
Minneapolis Club.
Minneapolis Club.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So close. Marquette, Minneapolis.
yeah,
Oh
exactly,
man.
exactly.
Yeah.
Chris,
Thank you.
Chris, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Chris.
I also have a lot of questions. Mine are even more naive, I think. But first of all, there are a lot of you've showed us a slide with all these different tracking registries around the country. Do states shop for tracking registries? And Oklahoma can choose Minnesota's tracking system, and Oregon can choose Oklahoma's tracking system. I mean, what is it? I mean, how does this go? And is it apples to apples? And what difference does it make? What does a certificate mean if everybody's all on different playing fields? You know, and it's like, oh, and then that you go da 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 and go up to the whole world, and you go, how do we make sense out of this? How are we doing? How is the world doing in terms of the whole business when everybody's on a different system? And you're doing a great job, but who's counting? You know, that's, you know, whatever. You could start there.
Chris, my
What?
Lord, we need to get drinks together. This is fantastic. That is a great set of questions. Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. So, the short answer to your question, can states shop? Yes. Do states shop? Not really, right? States shop the same way they replace their DMV software. Very rarely and very carefully, right? So, and with great bureaucracy and a very thoughtful procedural approach. So, and states only shop when there is a compliance market, when the state has a law that they need to implement. And so then they might say, oh, we have this law that we need to implement. Let's go make sure we have a tracking system that can help us fulfill that obligation. And so, for example, when the states of Washington and Oregon passed a renewable fuels program, those states said, oh, wait, how do we track this? And they found our renewable thermal certificate registry. And then they wrote in the administrative rules, you shall use the M-RETS CleanCounts renewable thermal registry.
So they can pick and choose what registry, what piece of your registry they want in addition to their own state's registry.
So, well, each state wouldn't have its own. There's not like an Oregon registry. Some states do, but some states don't. So, the state of Michigan has M-RETS, or Michigan Renewable Energy Tracking System. North Carolina has NC-RETS, North Carolina Renewable Energy Tracking System. But those are more unusual than usual. So, but the next question is like, well, shouldn't there be some agreement about what we're tracking and what a certificate looks like and what the data looks like for that? And absolutely, yes. There's a very, very, very bright fellow by the name of James Critchfield, who is at the EPA for more than 20 years running the Green Power Partnership Program for the EPA. He's so brilliant that we hired him. So he became our new head of registry. We're just he's one of he's just a phenomenal individual. And we're so lucky to have him because he's a very deep thinker about comparing and reassuring that all of the tracking systems are able to talk to one another, or that we people are calling up one another and having conversations to say, hey, we're looking at implementing this following nuance into our registry. Are you guys going to do the same thing? And then just basically cooperating. So there's a lot of coordination and cooperation. Ben Gerber, I've given a lot of credit to him, as well as our board at the time that hired him, because Ben is a very thoughtful and detail-oriented energy lawyer who's just, he'll introduce himself. He makes me look shy. He'll introduce himself to anybody. And the number of conversations he's had with regulators in Europe, with peers all across Europe, with Japan, with Mexico, with Singapore, all about standardization of certificates. And it's not just renewable energy certificates, it's all EACs, or energy attribute certificates. So making sure that energy attribute certificates are cross-border and have the largest market to be able to transact on them. So this is really important because Google and others that are the kind of the hyperscalers are really excited about like doing something called time-based EACs, or time-based RECs, also called hourly RECs, because they want to be able to show to the public that their data centers are powered for each of the 24 hours of a day with renewable energy. And so there's a coalition called the Level 10 Registry Acceleration Fund, and they are, and the Granular Certificate Alliance. It's a cohort of organizations that all want to make this claim that their production or their electricity use is all powered by round-the-clock energy. And so they noticed that the tracking systems weren't really building out these functions and features, because it's one thing to say, hey, we want to use hourly RECs, but it's another thing to realize that that's several programmers writing code for several months, and that costs money. So in order to update the registry software, they created a thing called the Registry Acceleration Fund. We are an awardee of the Registry Acceleration Fund and are using those funds to help implement hourly RECs throughout the MISO, throughout the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator territory by the middle of next year. So the questions you had about like coordination are all very complex, and it requires a lot of communication among the vendors and among the tracking systems with one another. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't agree.
But it does seem like there should be like there would be, or an emerging group body, whether it's by state or where the association or the coalition either meets, or a giant Zoom calls, or sharing and looking at like your little charts and looking where they all overlap and where they disperse, and sort of coming up with a common language.
Yep.
So that then it can translate globally, nationally, globally, like that. And then you would know, or could you, the International Panel on Climate Change, I mean, could they be using this to say, we're doing better or worse, and what country is doing better or worse? And the other thing I was wondering is that
that kind of work is happening right now. I'll share with it. Yeah, it is. In Europe, they call them GOES, or GOOs, Guarantee of Origin. So they're in Europe, they're not RECs, they're GOES.
Oh.
But the individuals that operate those tracking systems are in touch with us and other tracking systems on a very regular basis. There are some registries that only update their software when the state they are serving requires them to do so. And then there's other tracking systems like CleanCounts that notices the state policy that is advancing, that what's happening in Minnesota, what's happening in Wisconsin and Indiana, what's happening in Ontario. And we proactively build out some of the functions and features. So tracking nuclear is a good example of that. We built out that functionality in 2023. And now, in a couple of years, there will be states that begin to require utilities to report their nuclear generation.
Okay, so this will help us know whether we're getting Minnesota or any of the states in the Midwest or the areas you serve are meeting their state goals.
That's right. Yep.
And you said marketing. I mean, what do they actually use these little symbols, to like market to the general public? Like, we're a great company, look at all the certificates we have.
Cliff Bar does. There's a lot of entities that put it right on the packaging, right? Like they want people to know that they are using renewable energy for their products, and they'll put it right there on the packaging and or in the advertising.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Great question.
Mark, how many, or Rob, I'm sorry, how many states have this kind of compliance situation? Is it all of them or just a certain
No.
percent?
Yeah. I mean, you can roughly take a look at the states that have had, at some point in time have had a Republican governor, or excuse me, a Democratic governor and legislature. And those roughly line up with the states that would have a renewable portfolio standard or a RPS or a clean energy standard. So certainly the states that you can imagine, California, Washington, Oregon, as well as Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, New York. There's a number of states that have it, and there's a number of states that don't.
But
And
Texas is so good. Why wouldn't they want one?
it's interesting. They actually had a renewable portfolio standard several years ago. It's a very, very old one, and it helped jumpstart the wind industry in Texas.
Oh, you're going out.
And then it was only 1.5% of their electricity, but the state of Texas is a renewable energy leader and powerhouse for sure. Barbara?
Barbara, we can't hear you.
Oh, Barbara, you're on mute.
Sorry. Your name is Clean, has clean in it. And nuclear energy, once in a while, you'll hear, oh, there was a spill of radioactive water or something, and but it's not going to hurt anybody, and so forth. So I think that nuclear energy has a perpetual worry about being clean.
Yeah. We actually basically rely not on our own definitions, but we basically look to the states in terms of what do they decide is called renewable energy and what does they decide is called carbon free and or qualifies for a clean energy program. In the states of Minnesota, we have a carbon free energy law, and so yeah, the word is imperfect. Even solar gets hit by tornadoes and has to be recycled and or goes into a landfill. Even wind turbines, they're just figuring out now how to recycle all those turbine blades. So no question, clean is very much relative.
Okay.
But I guess maybe we could have used the word cleaner, but that doesn't maybe have the same ring to it. Cleaner counts.
But
Okay.
really,
And then I have another question too, one more. And it's in terms of watt hours or something like that you
Kilowatt hours and megawatt hours.
So in solar and wind, which can be quite variable. We know there's no solar right now here in Minnesota right this minute, but during the day the clouds come and the clouds go. So how do you determine that?
Yeah. Well, every single one of the projects has a production meter. And so that production meter sits between the project, whether it's wind, solar, hydro, and the electric grid. And then those production meter volumes get reported to the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, or MISO. And that's the data that we use from MISO is not to look at any one facility at a specific point in time, but to look over a period of time at how many megawatt hours of generation were produced.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Rob, is there any conversation about this at like the COP conference?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at the COP, most recently in Brazil, there was a lot of discussion about advancing renewable energy certificates and other certificates. There's also a robust conversation about using mechanisms like registries, also called book and claim systems, to help accelerate other low carbon commodities. So I mentioned ammonia, but there's also ways to create iron ore that use a less carbon intensive process.
Yep.
There's
Steel.
also, yep, there's also green steel, a way to produce steel with less fossil fuels, as well as cement and
Yep.
other chemicals.
Yep.
So so the idea of using energy attribute certificates, or even just attribute certificates for these other low carbon commodities, is a way to help kind of jumpstart those industries, and that is a very much a global conversation.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
Yeah.
that one more question that relates to Barb and what you just said, and that's so yeah, what comes into mind is because I had to make decisions about concrete, right? So it's a number 3 or something. It's way high on the carbon producing, emitting, whatever. And so, like a nuclear power plant, okay, great. Do they get certain points for coming up with a green kind of concrete to build their huge, massive nuclear power plant? You know, do they get points for building the infrastructure, or are you only talking about production? Do you only measure their production?
Yeah. So in production of a low carbon commodity like a green steel or a green cement, you would measure production. Well, there's really two ways to do it. The way to do it that would be the most similar to renewable energy certificates would be to measure production of the commodity that was produced with a low carbon process or renewable energy. Another way to do it would be to measure the offset, you measure the amount of less carbon that you use in producing something. And so that's more of a carbon credit scheme as opposed to a renewable energy certificate scheme. But yeah, I'm not aware of any low carbon or clean or renewable cement that's being produced at scale, and certainly not at the scale of that's needed for production for constructing a nuclear power plant.
Rob, you talked about the incentives, like for a pollinator garden.
Yeah.
Is there a reverse side to that, which you just kind of mentioned? Is there a reverse to that, like where like recycling of solar panels and wind turbines, that kind of thing? Is that a credit to the program if they've got that built in, or does that not counted yet?
That's an interesting question. So what we do when we think about and hear about new attributes to track is we listen to our customers. We listen to the private sector. We listen to the regulators. We listen to the project developers. And so we're always in conversations. We go to the Renewable Energy Markets Conference every year, which is a big gathering of all of the tracking systems. We all get together and have panels and compare best practices and whatnot. But that's an interesting attribute. I'll say that Doug, that Nathan Cummins and Miranda at the Nature Conservancy have been doing phenomenal work advancing something they call responsible energy for people and planet, or REPS. And so these attributes are things like agrivoltaics, cropped grazing, grazed by sheep, but also whether the project is creating and facilitating and supporting local jobs, local entrepreneurs, doing workforce training. So there's a number of different attributes.
Okay.
Your question about the recycling one is interesting. And I think that the most important thing is actually kind of getting back to, Chris's big question of like, well, how would a tracking system go about getting updated to track new things? And what I'm happy to share is that, we happen to be such an organization that is always interested in where the market is going. And we're not waiting until it's too late. We want to suss out like, well, how hard would it be to do that? And is it reasonable? And if we did it, would a lot of people use it? So we're very much tech forward and want to be, like I said, anticipating where the market is going and building solutions in a very cost-effective way, being great stewards of our nonprofit status and our nonprofit dollars, But also, like I said, anticipating the needs of both regulators and the voluntary market.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of thinking of like Excel with, what is it, a 1.5 million solar panels. When that decides to shut down, I mean, that is a lot of stuff to dispose of, if some,
I,
you know,
what I'm greatly encouraged by is that there are just a growing number of facilities that are really sophisticated in disassembling and recycling those solar panel pieces. There's some great videos on YouTube of a fully automated machine that you feed in a solar panel and boop boop boop. It just takes the aluminum off, takes the glass off, strips the circuits, and then picks apart the key valuable ones. I'm sure there'll be a lucrative market for that in the future.
one other final question is, what about batteries? Is that at all on the horizon?
Yeah, yeah. Tracking renewable energy storage is
Yeah.
absolutely a bit of a tricky wicket. You want to make sure when you're generating renewable energy and issuing certificates that you're issuing certificates for the generation. But then if the generation goes into a battery and then the battery gets charged the rest of the way with grid mix, well, what does that do to the whole thing? So there's some really robust and interesting conversations happening right now about that whole situation, about how do we make sure that we're maintaining the integrity of these instruments. And all I can say is I have a very high degree of faith in the professionalism expertise of the individuals working on these problems, and am confident in the solution.
Yeah, batteries seem to be a major topic, and especially since that was not killed by the big better bill kind of thing. And I know like Excel has just put in a number of batteries, or they're planning on it. So anyway, any other questions before we wrap up here? Awesome presentation.
I really appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you. I really appreciate entrepreneurs like Bear Honey, Bare Honey. They do a fantastic job of putting some hives out on projects like this. You can actually go and buy honey that is sourced from flowering solar farms. There's also a local entrepreneur called We Are Nuts, and they make some
Yes, I
delicious
know them.
products. And one of their products uses some of that honey to make a really yummy nut mix. I mean, it's like a peanut mix covered in toffee. These things are really good, Doug. I'm telling you.
We
So
had we had a ACES conference here in the cities a while back, and I was able to get a new flyer bus, and we took people around that were at the conference at night to and that's a electric bus.
yep,
But anyway, we took them around to breweries that were using the honey, from a bunch of those places. So that
nice.
that was a sweet deal.
That's great. That's great. What I love about the Bear Honey's business is that I always get to close every talk with, if you've had some of the honey sticks or some of the some honey from a pollinator friendly solar farm, now you know what Rex tastes like. And so it's actually not us that's making the Rex. It's actually those hardworking bees. So they get to work and they make the Rex, and they, fill the little honeycombs with the Rex. And then we go along and we take the Rex out of the little honeycomb, and there you go. So
Oh, nice one, Kim. I like that.
that's great, Jim.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. We really appreciate it. And it's we can't thank you enough. Because this is a topic, I mean, I've heard about it for at least 20 years since I've been in this. And, and I heard a lot about sales and stuff, and that the market wasn't in our area, but on the East Coast, there are, sales of wrecks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that that'll all expand here too.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely
It's
right.
already expanded here, obviously.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
I just wanted to say, Rob, thanks so much because this has always been such a complex topic
yeah.
and subject, but you are really, really great at being able to take this and answer questions in a way that's understandable. I really appreciate it. So great
any-
job. Good to see
And
you.
thank you so, I mean, Kim, anytime I can talk about using energy as an ingredient is going to be a good time because it's just that accessible. We don't need to make it any more complicated than that. It's just like reading the back of a label and being like, oh, this contains renewable energy. Oh, okay. All right, great. All right. How can I trust that? Oh, well, there's a certifier. Oh, nice. Okay, great. So it's just
Brilliant.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Great job. Thanks so much.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah. Every MRES people will be meeting at the board meeting in the near future. So thank you.